everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 3 of Trigun, and I have really enjoyed this series so far. So far, we've done a very interesting job of developing our character Vash, getting lots of sides of him without really getting to know him at all. He's still very, very mysterious. We've just kind of seen him act certain ways and be flirty, and we know he has crushes on girls and it doesn't work out for him. And then he's developing this very interesting dynamic between Meryl and Millie's characters following him around. And they're convinced that Vash cannot be Vash the Stampede, the great, infamous $60 billion man. Couldn't possibly be him. Not at all. Even though he fits all the criteria. So yeah, it's been really interesting so far. I've loved the 90s references, all of the tropes. Everything's been great. We went through like 6 animation styles in the last episode, so it was great. It was a nice follow-up to the pilot. But now that we're at episode 3, usually this is around the time in the series that we get started with some kind of plot, right? We've done the pilot episode, we did a second episode to kind of build up the dynamic and maybe the mysteriousness of our main character, and now we need to start setting things into motion, right? Because we know that there's lots of calamities that have been going on in these towns. We virtually know nothing about this world, to be honest. We know that there's pockets of desert-like areas that are having natural resources monopolized. We've seen that take place. We know that there's bounty hunters and insurance companies, but we don't truly know a lot about what this world is. Is it the future? Is it supposed to be the past? It has a very steampunk vibe. Is it an alternate universe? Is it Earth, 2,000 years later? Is it a different planet? We don't really know. Is this like going to be a Cowboy Bebop scenario, or is it going to be something different? So that remains to be seen, and I'm really excited to find that out as we go, right? But I do want to make note of a couple things. One, Silver Bard talked about how I was saying it was kind of weird that we had 2003 on the credits instead of 1998, as some of you have noticed on Hulu. And Silver Bard said that it could be that Crunchyroll is using the DVD release as part of their streaming service, because the DVD maybe came out in 2003, and I'm like, that seems like it could work. So I don't know what the case is, but maybe that is it. Either way, I like Crunchyroll's version, so I'm probably going to stick to it. Its platform is the easiest for me to navigate in terms of reactions. And then K.A., we've talked about Vash's voice actor, but K.A. noted the voice actresses that play Meryl and Millie. Now, Millie's voice actress is the same one as Yaruichi from Bleach, and I'm like, oh, awesome! I love Yaruichi, so the fact that Millie is the same VA, I like that a lot. But even better, Meryl's VA is the same one as the OG Bulma from Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. And I was like, my heart, I love that. Sadly, her voice actress passed away in 2017. So obviously, Vash the Stampede or Trigun Stampede is going to have someone else voicing Meryl if they're in that series. I'm assuming they are. So that is sad that she passed, but I love the idea that 2 of my OG anime queens, Bulma and Yaruichi, their voice actresses are in this. I'm like, mwah. So thank you, K.A., for that information. I really appreciate that. But yeah, now we're getting into the nitty gritty. We got to figure out what we're going to do. What's the conflict going to be? What world building are we going to focus on? And are we going to learn anything else about Vash out in this episode? And will Meryl and Millie finally come to the conclusion that Vash is in fact Vash the Stampede that they've been looking for this whole time? So I don't know. We'll see, right? But in any case, I'm excited to get started, y'all. I hope you all are too, but we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive in and watch episode 3 of Trigun. And we are going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh, this episode was so good. This episode was fantastic. This series has been so much fun so far, and it's been really interesting in terms of like just these little episodic adventures that all connect together. We have the thread going of Vash being this humanoid typhoon that comes into town, causes a ruckus, and leaves. And this is actually one of the first situations where we don't really have a ruckus cause. The town defended itself with the power of guns. So how much more 90s can we get, right? I do love the thematic elements of this episode and the commentary. There is some, like, underneath the funny humor and the over-the-top characterization, there is some really poignant, really cool themes that go along with this episode. And in the span of 20 minutes, it manages to make you feel for this guy, to feel for the hero of the town, to feel for his backstory, to understand where he's at. And this series doesn't waste any time. It doesn't linger too much on the moment. Now, that could be considered to be like a critique that we don't get a lot of time with the characters to let it all sink in. But I think the show's making a point of being like, no, this is a 20-minute little episodic thing. Vash goes, does his deed, and then leaves the town and goes on his wayward way like a vagabond to go find some other tasks to complete. But we do get some information about Vash. Some mysterious information. It's making his character even more mysterious. It's not giving us answers. It's just giving us more questions, right? So I want to get through the OP and start talking about this episode. Starting with the set piece of the light bulbs. I was talking right before it started, like, is this a version of Earth? And then I remembered, wait, they're the Thomases. That are the little rides. They look like the chocobos. Are their eyes where their nose should be? Like, is that giant mask just a front and their faces are down, like, by the snout where it drinks water? That's so creepy. What? It's very creepy. But I was convinced this could be a possible version of Earth, but then I was like, wait, no, there's the Thomases, so this is not Earth. It's very much an alternate fantasy world, right? But there's these really cool, like, from the OP and everything, these set pieces of these pieces of metal coming out of the ground that have the light bulbs attached to them, almost like they're an incubator or like it's a lamp to grow something. These are all like desert towns, and water is a precious commodity, so I wonder. And why are the light bulbs huge? Why do you need that? The light bulbs aren't on. They're not powering anything. They're not lighting up the city. So what's the deal? Like, there's this really cool sci-fi element that gets introduced into the background. And it's not explained. There's not really much attention drawn to it. It's just there. But it's in the OP, which pretty heavily in the OP, which leads you to believe that there's something going on with it. So I don't know. It just seems rather interesting, right? Seems rather interesting. But in any case, we find our main guy and talking about the town hero. What's really cool about this episode is that it makes us, the audience, think a certain thing at the beginning, and then it reveals itself, right? And once it peels back that layer revealing itself, lots of little things start adding up. Like originally, when the guy goes into the town, when Marlon goes into the tavern, the saloon, everybody treats him like the town drunk. Crazy old Maurice, crazy old Marlon. Like, they just treat him like the town drunk, and you don't think he's anybody important. But once you find out he was the town hero that spiraled into this, like, alcoholic state, then the woman's reaction to him coming in the bar makes so much more sense, because you're like, oh, she's reacting to him because she knows he was once a hero and he's fallen into this destitute, awful rut. And she's just like, he can't get himself out of it. So a lot of things start to make more sense, right? And Marlon just begs for drinks, saying, I'll take ethyl, methyl, anything. And they beat him up. I love the 90s look. Like, there's like a Tom Selleck looking guy here with the mustache where he's just like, what? There's a very distinct 90s aesthetic in how anime men are drawn. It either goes one of two ways. 90s anime, with the exception of like Toriyama, like Dragon Ball Z, I feel like it either goes one of two ways in the more like anime drawn like Trigun. It either goes into like super masculine, like Tom Selleck like characters, such as the guys that throw Marlon out, or they're like Bishonen beautiful men, like the most handsome possible. Or the third option is they're like freakishly cartoonish and kind of like One Piece characters, which is like the one guy, he looked like he was straight out of One Piece. I figured he felt like he was from Buggy's crew, is basically what I was getting from his character, the vibe I was getting. But he had like that Spike Seagal, like yellow shirt and black tie, so it was just it was messing with me. And so the crazy thing about this is that Marlon, the town hero, he made all of these guns that he gave to the town to protect themselves from bandits. And it's because of the guns that he loses his family and spirals. And then in this opening scene, the very first thing we see him in is these guys pointing the guns at him that could very well be guns that he made. Probably not, because they don't draw attention to him like the gun that the woman has. But just the idea that this gunsmith is being targeted with guns is so... It's such an intriguing concept, right? And they just leave him in the streets. Peacemaker. I love this episode's called Peacemaker, and the idea of how he made peace and what it ended up doing. It's fascinating. So we got to Warren City. Yeah, again, there's these weird giant light bulbs above the city coming out of the ground like some kind of incubator or something, and then the city's like a crater around it. Why? I'm so fascinated by the decisions here. There's something amiss. There's something in this world building we've not been told yet. And so it's either going to be like a Blade Runner thing that's never explained and it's just a cool set piece, or it has something to do with the plot. And I don't want to know which it is. I want to find out for myself. So we have Meryl and Millie. I like that Millie has like a little cup of espresso and like a tiny little like milfoy like little dessert there. I want Meryl's dessert. That sundae with the graham cracker looks freaking amazing. I'm like, girl, give that over. I love it. Meryl is so fun and I love her character, but she's so frustrating in that like Vash is literally right there. He's right there. Girl, you know it's him. Why are you denying it? I love that Millie's just accepted it. She's like, oh, hello, Mr. Vash. I'm like, she's just accepted it because he answers to it and he fits the description. Millie's over here being Sherlock, and Meryl thinks that she's Sherlock when really she's like not even at Watson. She's like, I don't know. She's, what's the detective that helps out Watson and Sherlock? Not Lancelot, but... Oh, y'all know who I'm talking about, but she's more like that. It's like, come on, girl, you have to know that it's Vash. She just doesn't want to admit it because Vash is supposed to be this end-all, be-all menacing force, and the tall, blonde, gangly goof that is following them, or that they're following, does not match up with that description, right? I do love her banana sundae, though. I would take it in a heartbeat. But yeah, hey, Mr. Vash. And he's like, oh, hi. I love that he's just like, I'm just going to respond because he's like, and he calls them the insurance girls. Working hard for that company's profit, huh? I feel like that's such like a backhanded compliment that Vash is like, you're just doing this for a corporation, right? Okay, cool. Like, did he backhand compliment them just now? Possibly. And Meryl says she's not going to listen to rumors anymore, but that there's no way a brainless idiot like Vash could be the actual Vash the Stampede. Mm-hmm. So in any case, Vash gets bumped into by Marlin. These horses have creepy like nose eyes. The Thomases. What the fudge? The moment we get the close up of Vash and that their eyes are where their noses are. What? That's so creepy. There's like, and the thing of it is, the show doesn't really draw attention to it. The show doesn't draw attention to the fact that these Thomases that you think their eyes are up here, but they're actually around their nose. The show doesn't draw any attention to it. It just happens. And you as the audience have to be like, wait a minute, and put two and two together. It's crazy. But yeah, him just rolling around, getting on Vash. I'm like, Vash as a bisexual king? Is this a thing? Is this a thing? I want to make it a thing. I love the whole animation of Vash like rolling on the ground, wiggling and trying to get out of the grasp of Marlin as the town like looks on and Meryl's like, ignore him and keep going. And he's like, insurance girl, save me. How could you be so cold? And then Marlin like gives him a kiss and Vash just screams for help. But he sticks with Marlin afterwards, so the animation of him like all over the floor rolling around, it reminded me of Jujutsu Kaisen where Yuji Itadori's like melting in the floor the same way. The animation was similar, so I almost wonder if it was like a reference. But yeah, so Vash comes in with him to the bar to get some like booze. I like that even though Marlin says he's wealthy, Vash is like, make it the cheapest thing you've got, please. And she asks for the gun. I like that the woman asking for the gun, it almost reads as if she knows the damage the gun can cause, not only within that space, but because of Marlon and what he's suffered with his wife and daughter dying, she's trying to make sure that something like that doesn't happen there, that he doesn't relive that moment. And I'm like, that's kind of considerate of her, and I really like it. I really like that moment. And of course, when he's asked to like empty the bullets, he just like opens it up and bullets go everywhere. And he said he brought the gun for Marlon to look at. And of course, at first, Marlon denies that he's the actual guy. And Vash is like, it misses by 3 whole inches and only 10 yards. So inches, I'm wondering, instead of inches, and yards instead of yards. I wonder if this is like a parallel universe and that's like their inches and yards. Seems like their measurements. And of course, the lady knows who he is, but isn't letting on either. Here's to new friends. Make note that Vash, the question is, so Frank Marlin, yeah, is the one they're looking for. And he's famous. He's the hero of this town. The gunsmith that went around door to door, passing out guns that he made himself to stop the bandits. And he's like, I wanted my own gun to get fixed up. And when she says he'll probably just pawn it for booze, that's the point where Marlon's pride gets a little stabbed by her words and he throws the bottle. Like, don't insult me, lady. It's fine. There's definitely a Goku quality to Vash. We're talking about who he relates to. He reminds me of Doctor Who. Reminds me of that. He also reminds me of Goku in that he's so like jovial and lighthearted, but then there is like a serious side to him if he's provoked. There is like a serious side to him in that regard. I like that about Vash. I like that Vash takes everything in and seems to be an observer and then responds kind of based on how he wants to read and feel out the situation. But yeah, he listens to Marlon's story like just with open ears. And Vash is like, tell me more, as he pours him another drink. With the moment the mayor was like, nothing truly big will ever happen in this small town. I'm like, dude, you just sealed your fates, right? And then the worst we ever have to deal with is the antics of drunks. And then there's Vash and him with like all the bottles of booze, right? So make note, the question is, does Vash actually get drunk? I think he does because he gets sick later on. But does he actually get drunk to the extent that we see him, or is part of it an act? I feel like he actually does get drunk, which is kind of curious because he's still able to function pretty rationally. So then we get that cat. I will admit, I felt a little spoiled. There was a comment on YouTube that was like, oh, the cat's just something that appears randomly. And I was like, dang it. I don't want to find out anything from the show. I want to find out things naturally. And so knowing that the cat doesn't really have a part to play, it's just a cameo character in the series, I was kind of bummed about that because it would have been cool to figure that out for myself. But it's been spoiled now, so I guess the cat plays no role except that it's just there. Cool. So please don't tell me any of that. Don't tell me any trivia or things like that. Let me find out in the story, and then once the series is over, you can inform me all of that extra trivia. But I like finding out things for myself, and so getting that kind of spoiled sucked a little bit. But yeah, so we go back to the mayor. The mayor's saying if he's really that great, I'd like to be attacked by him once. I'm like, dude, don't ask to be attacked by Vash. I like that Meryl's just like, please take us seriously. I like her little gesture there. And then we go to this dude on top of the hill, the boss, right? I felt like it was a scene out of Sarune. I was like, is this Sujimini in the Wild West with their umbrella above them? But yeah, this guy, this quirky villain with all the guns and like the big umbrella and the flamboyant style, like what the heck? And they say Vash the Stampede showed up. This man has the most freakishly long torso, and he's got the little like the twinkly jazz hands, the little fingers that are like typing and everything, the lunge fingers. Like he has that. It felt very vaudeville and very, I don't know, very vaudeville and kind of like comic villain of the week. I like it. It's great. We'll get Mr. Vash the Stampede to attack. He's got like such a long torso. What the hell? So the two of them get thrown out of the bar, Vash and Marlon. Where Vash gets this tie that he wraps around his head, we don't know. I love it's the most stereotypical. Like, usually we see the guys at the party, they get the tie wrapped around their head. I'm like, this was not Vash's tie. Where did it come from? Marlon wasn't wearing it, so somehow Vash has acquired this tie. And I just love that Meryl and Millie, like, stumble upon them, and they're like, Meryl's like, this idiot. There's no way he's Vash the Stampede. And Millie's like, oh, well, look, it's Mr. Vash. And she basically tells them, like, about them looking for Vash, and Meryl's like, quit blabbing the secrets that they're on night patrol. And so they go off and leave the girls to be on the night patrol, saying they're going back to Marlon's place. And Millie's like, oh, they're having a party. And Meryl gets serious and says, no, people only drown themselves in alcohol if they have something they want to forget. Which we find out from Marlon is the fact that his daughter and wife died at the hands of guns that he made. That's what he wants to forget about. And the fact that him trying to help, we're going to get to that discussion, him trying to help led to their demise. But then the question is Vash just drinking to get close to Marlon to figure out his story and see how Marlon can help him? Does Vash have something that he wants to forget? Vash has been seen at the bars. He was seen at the bar in episode 1. So if Meryl's notion about drinking to forget is true and Vash was at the bar, then what is he trying to forget? So lots of things coming up here, lots of things to think about. And I like that the show doesn't call attention to them. The show doesn't make it seem obvious that that's a thing, which is kind of cool, right? And so we see the two together. Man, that whole apartment is a wreck. Just whiskey bottles everywhere. I like that Wild Turkey somehow got some promotion in this. Although Hennessy, Millie at the end's like pouring herself some Hennessy. I'm like, girl, all right. And he has like the silly straws in the booze bottle. And so Vash is kind of like trying to pry out information about him and what he's doing. And Marlon talks about how the world is full of the weak and needy. And talks about that it's my job to help them. And either Vash was trying to pry information out and it worked, or Vash really is oblivious and just happened to drink with this guy and get him to confess up. It's one or the other, and at this point, I don't know which it is. But then he says, now I'm helping those who aren't in need. And Vash is like, what's going on? What do you mean? Yeah, he questions further through his drinking. It's wrong to discriminate, right? Help out one person and another suffers. I feel like that line, help out one person and another suffers, that line has been prevalent in the themes of about half the shows I've watched. And I was just like, oh, wow. So Attack on Titan, Vinland Saga, Monster, So the theme of all of those shows we're now getting in Trigun. Cool. glad we're all syncing up. Heaven Official's Blessing, same theme, same thread. That one line is emblematic in so many different series, right? Where if you help one person out, someone else will suffer. It creates an effect, right? Not necessarily a butterfly effect, but it creates this trajectory. That's the way that the world is like. I like that Vash is sitting there like, what are you talking about? Like, he's just like looking like he's drunk. Like, what? But yeah. So his whole thing was, he's like, I helped out my town, and in return, it all came back to bite me, and that those guns ended up in the hands of people who caused harm to the town and killed my wife and child. So what do we do with that? I love that. And he's like, this is equality. If I do nothing and just let it go, this is equality. And honestly, that is Heaven Official's Blessing is another series that I'm reading right now. And there is a thematic thread in that series because the main character decides to help out their hometown. And without spoiling anything, you should go read it. It's really good. But without spoiling anything, the main character tries to help out his hometown. And the priest, essentially, that he talks to says, no, don't do that. Your job is to remain neutral. Just let things play out. Don't get involved. Let them play out equal, and that will be balance and justice in the world. The idea that you don't get involved and things just happen as they were meant to. But, human nature that doesn't happen all the time. And sometimes we want to step in and try to help without realizing that we're shifting that balance for equality towards one specific side, which can have an effect, right? So I find that interesting. And I don't know if Vash necessarily believes that either. It's just the conversation the two of them have is so fascinating in that scene. And then Vash gets up out of bed and puts the blanket around him, right? And so what we find out is a flashback. Like, he finds the doll on the desk, like amidst all the booze cans, the cigarettes, everything. He sees the little girl's doll. And then we cut back to like someone giving him the coat. He's not the man he was 10 years ago. He's just a lush now. So this was when Vash was getting his coat, getting it trimmed and tailored by this guy. And he's asking about Marlon to fix his gun. And so apparently he's been looking for Marlon this whole time since episode 1, right? When he was at the tailor's getting his jacket to go on this Bilbo-like quest, he was getting information about Marlon. Fascinating. So I guess the red coat was a choice. And he said he changed. And that's when Vash is surprised to find out about the wife and child. To him, the real tragedy was that he made the guns that shot them. And yeah, the F. Marlin special. Not only that, but he gave the guns himself. He gave them the guns. So he gave these guys the guns that ended up killing his family. That is so heartbreaking. Oh my gosh. Oh. And so and then he holds the doll, the little girl, and then looks back to him. And then gets sick. Bless him. So yeah, not only do we not really get to see Vash's true reaction because he gets sick, but this episode, what's so fascinating about it is that it does not spend a lot of time focusing on the emotional. We get just enough info that we need to move on to the next point, because the idea, the bare bones of this is that Vash is looking for a guy to fix his gun. That's it. That's all we have plot-wise. Vash is looking for a guy to fix his gun. And then he gets threatened by this other guy and the town riots against them. That's the bare bones plot. But the author and everything adds this extra element to it that gives Frank so much more dimension as a character. He's not just the town drunk. There are layers to him, right? And he left the gun there for Marlon to look at. So then we go where all the townspeople are watching this flamboyant, umbrella-wielding, barrel-stroking man is threatening the town that he is Vash. And I can't believe that Meryl and Millie aided in armed robbery. Girls, you work for an insurance company. What are you doing? And they're trying to get a hold of him, saying they're from the Bernadelli Insurance Company, to try to get on his good side so that they can survey him. And I'm like, girl, that's not Vash. And they're like, we should have brought donuts. So then, yeah, apparently I'm going to have to pay attention now because the OP are adding scenes that I didn't realize they were adding. So we had Vash with the trash can lid on his head, right? And then we had this kooky villain of the week with his like Slender Man body in the shot as well. So yeah. And I like that they have 3 scenarios, like 3 options. Countermeasure number 1, we take the place of a hostage. I like that that's plan 1. We take the place of a hostage in this situation. And Marlon's like, no, that's a bad idea. Nay. He says, option 2, we shout earthquake and create a panic. He says, no, that's nay. And then option 3, he's like, well, then what are we supposed to do? Option 3 is we shut up and let him take the money. Like, we don't interfere. We just let him go. And Vash is like, I can't do that. He's like, well, why are you sticking your neck out? And he gives the made-up excuse at first. He's like, well, they robbed from a bank, and that mother was going to get her daughter a toy from the bank. So essentially, they've robbed from the town. And that's not fair, and I want to stop it. But then he admits that he makes that up and says that it's all about equality. And what they're doing isn't equality. And that's what Vash is here to restore. And it's like, he's like, I made it up. And I like that Marlon's like, oh, because that's kind of the same ideals he was pushing for, was equality in the town, that the people could defend themselves if they needed to, if it was a last resort. He was trying to give his village that defense, and it ended up backfiring horribly on him. But it's just that idea that Vash brings up that's so interesting. And then Vash, in the smoke, the dust, all that you need is like a tumbleweed coming by. Him with like the trash can lid looks like a hat. It's so good. And they're like, big bro. And then I love that he has the knife in his shoes and he used it to like cut the tire. What? When did that happen? When did he have that? I love it. And so they fire the guns at him, but he grabs the one and then he gets away. The much feared humanoid typhoon. And then of course he basically like taps that guy out. He like crushes his neck and like taps him out. And then tells him that he's like, you're not Vash the Stampede. And I love that the whole time while the woman stands up for the village, all Marlon can think of is he's like, why am I not doing anything? Why am I just standing here and letting people do this with the weapons that I gave them? Why am I not standing up for the situation? I love it. And then all the people in the town, I like the little boy. Everybody in the town has a gun. They just pull guns out like they're ready to go. And the little boy's got a pipe and they're like, whoa, son. We're not ready for you to deal with this. That's so crazy. I'm glad they didn't get the kids involved, right? We'll keep it family friendly here. And then I love that Marlon fakes out the cowardly man with his hand, making him think it was a gun. I love it so much. But yeah, they're like, it ends up working. And I love that he's like, because Vash had the hand in his pocket. It was like, is that a hand in your trench coat? Are you happy to see me? Sort of situation. And I love that Marlon's like, was this yours too? And he's like, it was mine too. I love that. That's so good that neither of them had an actual gun. They faked the bandits out without having to draw a single pistol. And Meryl's like, that man's nuts. I'm like, Meryl, that's the guy that you're looking for. That's the guy you're looking for, girl. So then, here's to the great folks who saved the town. And Vash somehow has found that tie again, wrapped on his head. Everybody is celebrating. Vash is excited. I love the animation on him, like, trying to get the woman to fill up his drink is so campy and weird. And then, they just got the bottle of Hennessy, Meryl and Millie, saying, well, we managed to get the town saved without any damage, so that's good. But we still supposedly haven't found Vash the Stampede. And then Marlon stops him and gives him his gun back. I changed the cylinder in the hammer and it's all tuned up. And it says E and F auto ejecting double action. And he's like, thanks. He says, you don't need to thank me, but tell me one thing. Why do you need that gun? And Vash, of course, doesn't answer the question. He says, I intend to use it for world peace. And he just laughs. So it's like, what is the purpose? Of course, Vash is not going to give us those answers. We're likely going to have to find out from someone else. And Vash, it's like Vash doesn't want to tell this man his entire sob story because he would be there for a long time. And he's like, I gotta go. So he just makes up that excuse to make him laugh and pacify him. Because then when he looks at him afterwards, he's like, okay, that'll do. I don't have to explain anymore. We're good. And then I am glad that Frank gave up alcohol. I'm glad he decided to go sober. That's really cool. I like that he's going to clean up the town. He's going to clean up himself and then clean up the town. And of course, Meryl and Millie can't hear what they're saying. They're saying, and he asks. He's like, "Oh, my name, and then he throws up. It's like, come on, we all know who it is. So then we cut to the next day where they are literally following him. And Millie's like, why don't we just talk to him instead of stalking him? And Meryl's like, we're not stalking him. He just happens to be going the same direction as us. And then we cut back at the end of the episode. And when he looks up at the two suns, he's like, bang, bang. That's interesting. There's two suns. There were two light bulbs in the city at the beginning of the episode. Another sign that we're not on Earth is that there's the two suns. But, Y'all have to forgive me. And then that's the episode. So again, a really nice self-contained episode. I really liked it. I liked Frank's character a lot. Meryl just needs to just face facts and realize that it's him. Girl. Come on. And Vash proves he has another side to him. The side that he can party, he can get drunk just with any guy possible, but he has that like kind of mysterious side to him where he doesn't want to quite explain himself and what his goals are. So that's interesting. But yeah, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if this would be like a two-parter, but it seemed like a pretty self-contained episode. So I guess we're on to the next journey. So I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below. I really enjoyed this episode, but I would love to know what you all thought as well. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. Please no spoilers. And I'll be back next week with episode 4 of Trigun.